Hey guys, this is Lauren Hollis for NOI Education Services, and today we are doing part 2 of our Navigating ASQA Risk Priorities for 2024 and 2025. If you didn't manage to catch our last episode, by all means, please jump back and feel free to watch that. We talked about non-genuine providers, bad faith operators, and the risks posed by international delivery and what that kind of means if you sit in the international delivery area. Today, we are actually going to be talking about academic cheating, RPL, and shortened course duration are kind of the three that we're going to be touching on. So obviously, the first one that I want to touch on is academic cheating. And this one is a very, very interesting one for me because of the increased instances of academic cheating. Now, obviously, there has for a very, very long time basically been like a business model of contract cheating services. So there were a whole range of websites that you could go onto, and particularly like with your with the assessments that people used to purchase commercially, like on a large scale, you could literally put in like the name of the provider, the unit of competency, and the the assessment, and it would pop up with like a report that you could purchase in like 30 seconds. With the increase of AI, what we're seeing is we're seeing a huge amount of services that are claiming to be able to provide you with like 100% genuine, authentic, AI checker proof sort of assessments for particular assignments. And we're seeing that as a very big business model, which is going to continue to grow. It's going to continue just to be a part of our industry. There are always going to be students in the higher education and in the vet space that choose to pay for their assessments rather than do them themselves. And so it does become very important for providers to really start to think about how you're going to approach it. And then obviously with AI, we've just got a huge amount of very lazy students, to be completely honest, who are literally just like copying and pasting the questions and the answers from AI into assessments and things like that. Now, there's a couple of strategies that I have that I think are really important for this. So the first one is to really look at not buying off-the-shelf assessments. If you are buying off-the-shelf assessments, like do take the time to actually go and take a look. Majority of the time, if you're buying large-scale off-the-shelf assessments, they are not bespoke and they are required to be contextualized. A lot of the time, you'll see that in your contract with the provider that it requires you to go and contextualize. So think about using that contextualization process to actually AI proof some of the assessments a little bit. Okay, that would be like the lowest kind of the least sort of thing that you could do. The other thing is making sure that your trainers are actually working with AI. Okay, the reason for that is that I've managed to hack almost every AI checker that's out there. There's not many that I haven't been able to hack. Been able to full Turnitin. I've been able to full, GPT Bard, like all sorts of different services. There are definitely ways around them. So, and the other thing is I was having an interesting conversation last night with somebody who was going, well, the other thing that we also need to recognize is that using GPT in particular ways or using AI in particular ways is perfectly acceptable because we're all doing it in the workplace. It's acceptable in the workplace. So we actually want students to be bringing in some use of AI for certain aspects of what they're doing. For example, if they've got to develop a policy and procedure, we want them to draft the base of that from AI, and then we want them to refine it, edit it, contextualize it, make sure that it's, meets all the legislative requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really important that we find that blend. The more your trainers are actually working with AI, the better they're going to be at spotting like some of those little key giveaways, like, the use of Z instead of S, the use of the dot point structures, some of those little formatting ones. It's just super obvious when it's been written by a bot, right? So I think it's really important that you're doing that. The other thing is that your trainers are the ones that are going to have the relationships with the students, and so therefore they understand the students' natural language patterns, and then they're going to be able to see when the responses that are put into the assessments go way outside of that natural language pattern and the students' natural language capabilities. So I think it's making sure that you're giving your trainers plenty of professional development and opportunities to become familiar with some of these AI technologies is probably one of the best things that you can do within your business to cull the academic cheating that happens within some of the classrooms. Now, the other thing, the other part of this is obviously technology. One of the things that we're starting to see is rather than AI going, well, this was produced by AI, they're giving it like a score. 30% of this was built by, 30% of this is AI. Okay, so great. So then it's discussions to go into your policies and procedures as to how you're actually going to manage that. And making sure that you've actually updating your academic cheating policy, making sure that AI is included in that policy, being very clear on the ways in which you can use it, and also in how, warnings, rejection of assessments and things like that is actually going to work if cheating, plagiarism and things like that are identified. So be very, very clear on what the consequences and the processes are that then follow through that. So those are some of the things. As I said, also with technology, I was at the Accelerate conference not long ago, and I know that they're bringing in a feature whereby it requires live video to be provided. So I think what we are probably going to see is we're going to see more. We're probably going to see inclusion of that some of those verification requirements. So let's say you've got 20 short answer questions, maybe 2 of them are going to be live upload responsive video to help bring in some of that authenticity component for students, so that students actually genuinely have to demonstrate that they have knowledge. And obviously when it comes to skills, guys, there needs to be an interaction where a trainer is observing the skills of the learner. I can't believe I still have to say this. The trainer needs to observe the skills of the learner. They need to observe the learner demonstrating the skills, and that needs to be evidenced clearly with benchmarks and comprehensively mapped to the unit of competency. We will get into that when we get into the new standards and we talk about principles of assessment and principles of evidence, because people still don't get it in 2024. And I doubt they're all going to get it in 2025. And that is okay. That is why we are here to help. But making sure, key takeaways: update your cheating plagiarism policy, provide your trainers with an opportunity to do professional development so that they can identify it. And 3, where possible, I hope you're utilizing systems that will allow you to start to incorporate some design elements to mitigate some of these academic cheating issues. So the next one is RPL. God love RPL. It has been a ASQA risk priority for as long as I can possibly remember. And that is basically because there are still so many people who don't actually understand what RPL is, don't understand how to do it correctly, and just keep getting it wrong. RPL is not, I'm going to take your resume, I'm going to come out and observe you in the workplace, you're going to provide me with a whole bunch of policies and documentation from your workplace, and I'm going to give you a certificate. That is not what RPL is. RPL is recognition of prior learning, okay? And in the vast majority of cases, okay, students are not going to be able to provide evidence of 100% of the performance criteria, knowledge, skills within that particular qualification. Now, units of competency, maybe sometimes you can get away with, but the vast majority of the time, the student has got the experience, okay? And so one of the things that you need to be thinking of is do your students have the experience and therefore can skip the learning, okay? Versus do they have evidence of competency against all of those criteria, all right? A lot of people really don't understand this, and RPL evidence needs to be as strong and still meet all of the principles of assessment and rules of evidence in the same way that competency does, okay? It still needs to be sufficient. It still needs to be valid. There are inadequate assessment processes. There is unethical and unclear marking. There is not enough gap training and there is issuance of fraudulent qualifications. There's just continues to still be a real lack of understanding of what RPL is, and how that needs to be done. And I'm going to be honest, in the vast majority of cases, RPL can end up being just as expensive a process, like time-wise, for an RTO as normal training and assessment will. So a lot of the time, I think that it is something where RTOs need to look at it in more detail and go, right, we recognize that you've undertaken the learning and we've got a process for documenting that. And now we're going to take you into an assessment-only process, because we've also identified that the vast majority of documentation that we would need in order to be able to confirm that you have the skills and knowledge for this qualification, you are not going to be able to produce. Okay. When I did my diploma of vet, right? I did not RPL a lot of it because it would have been impossible for me to provide the evidence, because my audit reports would have had to have been redacted. The assessment tools that I had built for providers were licensed to those particular providers. The training and assessment records that I'd undertaken, they were the property of that particular RTO. They were that RTO's IP, and therefore I was not able to produce the records and all the details of the students that I had trained and everything like that. So mine was a combination of RPL and straightforward assessment, because it was not that I did not have the skills. It was not that, I could not get a hold of the evidence, but I could not provide that evidence as part of my RPL process because of a range of IP confidentiality sorts of factors. And that's the kind of thing that we need to keep into account when we start to look at these processes. Okay. So if you are a provider that's offering RPL, really do need to take a look at this. Look at how you're marketing it. Think about whether or not it is the most appropriate avenue for you, and whether or not you're being clear, and whether or not you are, take it through some basic validation processes would be my recommendation. The last one is obviously shortened course duration. Okay. Coming into the market 17 years ago, very, very typical to see Cert 3s being run in 2 to 4 weeks. Thankfully, we don't see a lot of that anymore. But it's like misleading marketing is definitely a big thing, where we kind of go, hey, run this course in 2 weeks. But then when you actually go and look at it in more detail, it's like there's a face-to-face component of 2 weeks. And then there's assessment that the students have got to do afterwards, which is expected to take actually, 6 to 12 months, right? So students go into it with a particular mindset. And obviously, guys, part of this is the fact that students are not great at reading. If you're just providing them with a student handbook, nowadays it is really important. Try and incorporate more video, try and incorporate some audio. There's some really cool tools out there that, make that sort of a process easier. But misleading marketing in shortened course durations, thinking to the new standards where we really are looking at fostering more transparency and trust in our marketing, is definitely something that you want to look at. And, certainly one of the frustrations for a lot of the good RTOs is that they're then in competition with these people who do have the deceptive marketing practices, do have the lower completion rates, do seem to be just in it for getting a lot of the money up front and then coming out with, a 10% completion rate at the end of it, because most of the students may have gone through and done the face-to-face training, but then didn't realize all of the assessment stuff that was required afterwards, and then didn't get it done, and so therefore then went and spent all of this money to get no actual outcome from it. And that kind of burns their perception of like our industry as a whole. So try and be really clear in your marketing with what your actual course durations are, okay, and then identifying like this is the face-to-face component. And then if you are one of those providers where you've got a face-to-face component, and then you follow that up with like, yes, and then you're going to be expected to do this assessment and this assessment and maybe attend this one class 3 months after, and on average our students are taking 6 to 12 months to complete this qualification, make sure that information is really straightforward. That's the kind of stuff that we like bold and put into your marketing flyers and up on your website and stuff like that. Like, you need to actually make sure that students are provided with that information, and then provide it again through kind of like an orientation process. So that is it for today. Short course durations, RPL, academic cheating. I hope you've taken away a couple of things that you can use to improve your RTO and strengthen it moving forward. Feel free to ask any questions. I will do my best to answer them below. Feel free to disagree, but do so respectfully. I hope you guys have found this helpful. My name is Laura Hallows for NOI Education Services, and I hope you guys have an amazing day.